Hey fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Today we're going to talk about the best tennis rackets on the market right now, and when I say best, I obviously mean the rackets I think are the most interesting, actually the ones I think will suit the most players of you guys watching, fellow tennis nerds. And you have to take it with a pinch of salt because it's very subjective, but I will explain my reasoning. I try to divide it up in categories, but I don't want to mention too many rackets. As you know, I test pretty much everything on the market, so I might overwhelm you. There is an article called Top Tennis Gear right now on the website, but I've made some small adjustments. That also talks about overgrips, strings, shoes, and whatnot, the things I test, tennis bags, and so on. And patrons have a video form of that, as do YouTube members. If you want to support, you do that through YouTube or patreon.com/tennisnerd. If we start with one of the most popular categories right now, and for a good reason, it's the kind of the all-rounder intermediate rackets. Rackets like the Head Speed MP, which Henrik has been raving about recently. Works outdoors, didn't like it as much indoors, but he loves that frame. I've been a fan of two rackets mainly. The Prince Phantom 100 305. I think that's an excellent all-rounder racket with great feel, good sweet spot, has pretty much everything, comfortable for your potential tennis elbow, your tennis arm. So just a racket I really like. The round head shape is not going to be for everyone. Comes in two weight ranges, the 290, 305, both 16-18, but there's also an 18-20. I recently published a video about these rackets, but I think they're great. If you like a thinner beam, but you want a more forgiving head size, similar kind of to a Gravity, I think this is the way to go. One other racket, if you prefer a little bit more of a traditional racket shape, is the Wilson Blade 100. Version 9, really impressed by this frame. One of the best all-rounder rackets on the market. I prefer it over the 98s, which are more demanding, more control-oriented. Also good, but these are the two rackets I want to mention for intermediates to advanced, liking a racket that balances a lot of things and doesn't go all in on control, spin, power, because that can be a bit gimmicky. You want to have a more balanced way of playing. This works for so many different players, counter punchers, attackers, whatnot, but it might not give you the max of anything, but it gives you a good balance. So the Prince Phantom 100 305 and the Blade 100 version 9 are my favorite, more forgiving control rackets. I call them all-rounders. There's something to be said for the Head Speed or the Dunlop CX 400 Tour, two rackets that I did enjoy, but I felt like these two were better for my game, and overall I think more people will like them. If you are a beginner or a veteran doubles player, you don't have the strength to swing a heavy racket. I talked about heavy and light rackets in recent videos. I'm a bit more of a fan of players using slightly heavier rackets. I feel like it can help your technique, get more plow through. But there's also a picture for some players that you can use a lighter racket and get a lot of free depth, free spin, free height over the net. And my favorite kind of beginner veteran doubles player racket is the Head Speed Team. The new Head Speed Team, I find it to be a great racket, beautiful feel, really nice and plush, and easy to use, and very light to swing at 270 grams unstrung. Of course, you can find lighter rackets, but I think this is kind of, for a beginner player, as good as it gets. However, it doesn't really have the mass for players who are like a lower level intermediate, who want to improve, might be too light. I don't find an issue with players using a little bit more mass than you might think. I think it helps stability, and I've seen it over and over again, that players that normally get recommended a pretty easy racket by their club pro or the local club shop and might benefit actually from using a little bit more demanding racket to improve their technique, or have a bit more weight on the racket to improve stability. So there are different theories here, but I tend to go personally towards the more heavier type of racket and use the control that gives. For players looking for top spin, heavy spin, they want some power, they want some spin, they want to dominate their opponents. They like when the ball has a little bit more launch angle, and it feels like it works for them, whether they play a bit more flat themselves and want a little bit more lift over the net, or they play with massive spin and you just want even more of that spin game. The Pure Aero 98 is my absolute favorite. Just ask Alcaraz, Rune, and these guys, they love this frame. It's a great racket. The new one is more dampened than the VS, which has a rawer feel and a little bit less comfortable. I think the new one is more comfortable. I've seen players of all different levels use this frame, and happily so. Obviously, you have to know that it's gonna give you a high launch angle and more power than you'd expect from a 98, but overall, I find it to be an excellent racket. It has to be mentioned. I would also say that if you want a bit more forgiveness than the 98, which requires a slightly faster swing speed, you go to the Pure Aero 100. The regular Pure Aero 2023, I really think they hit it out of the park with that update, and I hope they can do the same with the Pure Drive. Of course, I haven't yet tried the new Head Extreme tours that are about to launch in July, so you know, might want to add that at some point, but I have not yet tried them. Usually with the head updates, they're quite subtle improvements. Nothing wrong with the current Head Extremes, but I'm of course going to test the new ones as soon as I get my hands on them. Control rackets. A lot of you guys, you like control. You want to feel that you can swing out confidently without the ball going out. I see that over and over again. Some players might urge you to go for a more easy, more powerful racket, but sometimes that's not the solution. I've seen it with players I know that are not very high level players, intermediate players, but they just feel more at home with a smaller head size, a control-oriented racket. If you want a modern racket that still retains excellent control, and there's obviously the Blade 98s, which are good, but my favorite is the Radical. I used this racket for quite a while. I still come back to it from time to time. The Radical is simply a brilliant frame. It gives you a crisp feel, some power, some spin, but the string pattern is dense enough to make you feel like you can actually go for your shots quite a bit. And the feedback when I recommend the Radical to players have been just amazing. They come back and they say, oh, you know, two of my friends tried it. I also made a switch. So gotta give it to that one. Although I did really also like the new blades, both the 1820 and the 1619. But I would say for most players, you go with a more open pattern, you have a little bit help with lift, and it's still a control racket. Now we are at the best power rackets, rackets that give you a firm feel, bit more energy transfer into the ball, and it helps you a bit more with depth, but maybe not as much launch as these spin rackets I talked about before, where the ball has a tendency to just go a little bit higher. The E-Zone 100 has been my favorite since it came out, still is my favorite in the power category. I want to give a mention to the Diadem Nova. Those rackets are also very, very good. Good dampening, I would say better than the Pure Drive, and retaining a pretty dense string bed. I think these power rackets need to have a little bit of a tighter string bed to improve the control as you go for your shots. So the Nova should be mentioned as well, but the winner is the E-Zone 100. I think that's a great frame. Of course, you're going to get loads and loads of power with that racket, so might not be for everyone, but thanks to its dense string pattern, the ball is still controlled. I think next year we're going to have a new E-Zone, so I'm curious how that will play. Probably will be released in the same year as the new Pure Drive, so that's going to be an interesting battle of them. But if you want a racket that you don't see as much, the Diadem Nova is a good one. So that's the most exciting rackets on the market right now. Nothing wrong with using a racket from 15 years back. You should use what you like, what you get a good feel, a good stability, good sensation when playing, puts a smile on your face. This is a hobby, we're having fun, we're trying to do our best on the tennis court, get a good workout. Obviously, if the racket is hurting your arm, you have to reduce string tension, you might have to look for another racket. But generally, I would just say play with what you want. And if you need help, there's a consultation service. I'll put the link in the description. 10% off Tennis Warehouse Europe using TNER10. There are links for that in the description below. I hope you find the racket you're looking for. Let me know in the comments which one you're playing right now, and if you're looking for something new or what you want to improve in that racket. That's it. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.